What if you have lived to 93 years of age, paid your dues, right? All of a sudden, you got an eviction notice, no fault of your own. Put up the picture full mass. 93-year-old California woman is being evicted after her building was sold to a developer. I'm going to explain the rule that allows this. Andrea Perez, 93, is devastated. Miss Perez is devastated as she packs up all of her belongings. These are things she has accumulated for over 4 decades. Quote, I feel very sad, end quote. After calling this rent-controlled fourplex home since 1984. Ms. Perez is being forced to leave, not for failing to pay rent, but because the building was sold to a new developer. Along with her daughter and her grandson, who live next door in the same complex, she now faces eviction. Quote, this has been my home for 40 years, says the 93-year-old. Perez's grandson, Marcel Bourbon, shares the frustration many tenants are facing. He says, quote, we're being evicted through no fault of our own, just some company can make a buck off our living situation, end quote. The developer is using what's called the Ellis Act. The Ellis Act is a California law initially intended to allow small landlords to retire by evicting tenants in rent-controlled units. However, corporations and developers are now taking advantage of this law, pushing long-term tenants out to replace them with higher-paying ones, which, by the way, is antithetical to the entire reason you created the laws in the first place to protect the tenants in rent-controlled environments. According to the tenants, the LA Tenants Union, this is becoming increasingly more common throughout Los Angeles. Tenants from across LA gathered to protest this week. Andrea Perez also voiced her concerns about the skyrocketing prices, the rent. She said $4,000, $6,000. That's a lot of money for one apartment. With little time left, Andrea and her family must vacate their home by October 25th. We want to help them as much as we can. A GoFundMe has been created, has been launched for Andrea and those looking to help. A link will be available with this video. So when we post a video, we'll put the link inside of the information. So just make sure you find it there and provide what support you can. If you can't provide support, provide a positive thought or prayer. Yasmin, one of the greatest lies people are told in this nation and beyond is that there's not enough. The second biggest lie is we're going to run out. There is enough, and we're not going to run out of anything. We're not. There are enough resources. The reason why it feels like there's not enough, and they create this narrative and they frame the debate or the argument, is because they want more than what anyone else wants. And so it makes it seem as if it's not enough of the pie left to split. Yasmin, thoughts?
It's a false sense of scarcity, right? Yeah. And whenever you live in that state of mind where, you have to, it's capitalism, right? Everything with capitalism is growth, right? You have to just keep accumulating more and more and more. And then you do other things with that money once you get it. And then you build more and more and more. There is no upward ceiling when it comes to capitalism. If you do hit a ceiling, you're bad at capitalism, right? If you are owning investment properties or development properties, you are doing capitalism. You're actively doing it. And so the only thing that matters with capitalism is the profit. And the only thing that matters is the bottom line. And people like this 93-year-old woman, she's just a casualty. That's not the developer's problem, right? It's not his problem where she goes or who takes care of her, where she lives. It doesn't matter. right? Because that's not how you do capitalism. And, when you're 93 years old, you shouldn't have to worry about being suddenly homeless for any reason, because our society should be taking care of people like this. This is incredibly sad, but this is the reality that we live in when people don't own anything anymore. We have no rights, no property, no say over where we live, no say over, whether or not they decide to raise or rent, however arbitrarily they decide to do that. It doesn't matter whether or not she's lived there for 40 years. It's just a property to the developer, but to her, it is her home. And I think that's the underlying problem with stories like this one. In this country, we see housing as a piece of property, as a means of earning more capital. It is a piece of capital. It is an asset, right? But really, housing is a home, right? That's where people live. That is security. We love to complain about the houselessness crisis in this country. We have houses, we have places to put them, there is property that has been developed. And, I think about this a lot because here in Texas, they love to develop land and they love to, make new kinds of housing and things like that. But whenever you drive around, all you see are people cutting down all the trees and paving over our floodplains. And we see a whole lot of empty, abandoned buildings that are just sitting there empty. And it's like, just do something with that stuff. And I know it's more complicated than that or whatever. There's always an excuse as to why this or that can't happen and why this needs to happen. But ultimately, the answer is they're developing new land because more people get paid more money if they do it that way versus the other way, which would be a lot better, not just for the people, not just for the communities, but also for the environment, just all around. So, like I said, I think about this stuff a lot and I hate it. I hate what's happening.
People say it's tough. It's not that tough. You can do right and do well at the same time.
You can do whatever you want to do. You can always figure out a way to get it done.
That's right. It takes intent.